Okay, people. So, the trustful Julian Assange. This is a new documentary written and directed by Kym Staton. Staton also produces, along with Natalie Minana, um, Films for Change. It is edited by Andre Cavia and Richard Frankel. Uh, Juan Passarelli is an advisor on the piece. Um, it's associate produced by Izzy Verita, Jazjet Kua, Laureen Anita Bryce, and Michael Kenoya. We hear from the likes of Stella Assange, Daniel Ellsberg, John Shipton, Tariq Ali, John Pilger, Christian Hofferson, Rebecca Vincent, Gabrielle Shipton, Jill Stein, Jennifer Robinson, Mary Koskadidis, David Shoebridge, David McBride, Nij Lal, Solette Dreyfus, Paul Piers Sals, Dean Yates, Dominic Pradil, Stefana Marizzi, Chris Hodges, and Mark Davis. It's a fascinating piece of work, right? The gist is as follows. Right, despite being detained, silenced, and hidden from public view in maximum security Belmarsh Prison, multi-award-winning Australian journalist and publisher Julian Assange has become one of the loudest voices for free speech of our times. He has also risked everything to bring truth to light. The disclosure of WikiLeaks and Assange from 2010 onwards ignited a firestorm of controversy and a relentless ongoing pursuit by the most powerful empire on the planet. The trustful Julian Assange examines the meaning and significance of the insights that WikiLeaks shared with the world, resulting behavior of the governments involved, the extraordinary personal risks taken by Assange, and the wider fundamental issues around press freedom that affect all of us in our right to know. Filmed over 2 years on 3 continents and in 10 cities, the film features an array of luminaries, including Daniel Ellsberg, um, John Pilger, Tariq Ali, Chris Hodges, um, with the insights of experts, including Jennifer Robinson, Jill Stein, Stephanie Mizzi, Niels Melzer, in addition to reflections of Assange's family, including Stella Assange, John Shipton, and Gabrielle Shipton, examining the motives of this peace activist and innovator. This astounding, shocking, and inspiring film invites viewers to embark on a journey of understanding where the circumstances are unprecedented and the destination unexpected. Right. So, I mean, it really does, right? We got a statement from the director. In 2010, I witnessed the collateral murder video on the nightly news. At the time, I didn't make sense of it. I had no idea of the significance of this footage, who Julian Assange or WikiLeaks were. Around 7 years later, I began to take an interest in Assange and WikiLeaks. I watched a few documentaries and a picture began to emerge. The whole situation was compelling and intriguing. The main motivation for making this film came out of my own feeling of uselessness on the issue. The fact that I had taken so many years to become aware of it and the urge to help in some way. In 2021, I began researching to make this documentary. Throughout the course of the first year of research and production, I learned a lot about the treatment of Assange, the significance of work WikiLeaks, and the wider issues affecting all of us. The deeper I delved into these issues and the more interviews that I conducted, the clearer my sense of injustice and my disgust with those responsible became. In mid 2022, after a year of production, my emotional reaction to this predicament reached a peak. For 60 days, I wrote parts of the narration for the film, a page or so per day. I shared my daily writings on social media. They received many responses. The passages that had the most responses and engagement became the first draft of the narration script for the film, with coming up with the concept and style of the trustful with our co-producer Natalie Menina. We had a number of departures from the usual style of a political documentary. First, we felt that it was highly time for a film that would delve into the meaning and significance of the Assange predicament, rather than following a strict chronological throughout. A film about why, rather than just what and when. Secondly, we didn't want to be a cold, dry political film that would resonate only with a tiny section of society. We wanted to give the film warmth, feeling, and a soul. For this reason, it is infused with philosophy, poetry, and art. We wanted audiences to experience somewhat of an emotional ordeal in watching the film. A range of emotions from sadness to anger to shock to hope, to leave the cinema exhausted, shaken, and compelled to act. The aim of this film is to add weight to the campaign for freedom of this heroic, courageous Australian journalist and peace activist, for his freedom and the freedom of us all. So, yeah, that's Kym's statement. And right, when you watch this, it is shocking, right? It is shocking because there's information that comes to light that I definitely did not know, right? Now, I've spoken about this a while back on Echoes from the Void, right? And my big thing was the rape charge. You know, what I mean? Like the whole leaking of information. I'm just like, look, I don't know enough to really talk on that. I think atrocities, boom, they should be brought to light. The riskiest part is the exposure of people's names, right? That was the riskiest part of that. But again, I don't know. I haven't read this information. But it was the rape thing. We then find out in this there was no rape, right? There was no rape. It was two women asking for HIV tests, which I don't know how that becomes rape. That's crazy. That's real frigging crazy, right? But the other thing as well, we then learn that, you know, the whole putting people's lives at risk with the names and all of that is false as well. Because in, you know, Chelsea Manning's trial, they had to admit that that wasn't really a thing, right? And Chelsea Manning is essentially being was charged with a lot of the things that Assange is being charged on. So that aspect of it, you'd have to throw out, right? So those were two huge things, and it just demonstrates just how broken the press system is. You know, I think the pandemic highlighted that so greatly. You know, the fact that certain things weren't being covered, even though they were truth, right? I remember when, you know, before Elon took over Twitter, right? Twitter banned the New York Post, right? It was just insane things that were happening. You know, we know that it's a failing system. and people aren't buying newspapers. So our stories are becoming clickbait rather than the investigative news stories that you used to get. And like the things I grew up on, just not a thing anymore. And this documentary really does shine a light on that, right? On the injustice. We hear from all of these remarkable people. And I think that the Daniel Ellsberg, having him talk on this was really valuable, because of, everything that went down with him in Vietnam. Right. So I think having that voice shine through was big. But yeah, it does inject that human aspect to things. It does create an emotional, linchpin for people to kind of witness, and that's through the interviews, from the information they drop. But then also, I think the style, because we do have this animation in there, which is I was not expecting that. Was very interesting, to kind of capture this, to, go back to Assange's youth to talk about all of these different things. I've never seen the collateral murder video, which is it's not good, right? But now my eyesight is rubbish, obviously. You know, I I didn't know they weren't guns, right? So I think anyone in that situation, especially you're seeing so many threats on a daily basis, it doesn't surprise me that you automatically got their guns, right? The response and everything like that in the video doesn't surprise me. And I don't necessarily blame the soldiers. And I think when you're doing this, it breaks you. You know what I mean? Like you speak to anyone coming back from war and they're desensitized. So obviously, you think you've taken out some people, you're gonna laugh, right? The issue is the cover up, the lies, right? If you're putting out a press release to the news saying it was this attack by insurgents and there was, a shootout and all, when there wasn't, that's the problem. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily the video, horrific as it is, it's the actions after that, right? And you have to look at who did that, who was covering all of this up, So I think they're the big things, right? This repeated cover up of truth. And that's what WikiLeaks, that's what Assange kind of did. He shone the light on a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff, which is so important. So important. But when you think he's been in lockdown for over a decade, that is crazy. That's crazy. In solitary confinement for all this time, when we know, right? Just the 2 years of the pandemic, people you've got experts talking about the problem that can cause to mental health, mental well-being. But he's been in solitary confinement for years. So I think this documentary definitely does what it set out to do. It shines a light. It makes the situation very clear. Very clear. Now, obviously, I think with anything, you should do your own research, right? Look into things. But I think this definitely lays a foundation, and also shows that, there is crazy injustice. I mean, we know there's injustices, right? We know governments are broken, you know, lies all the time. And it's not just the US, it's not just the UK, it's so many. It's so many. Right? I think wasn't it Benghazi who was the journalist who was in a US embassy in Turkey, I think, and he was assassinated by I think it was Iran or something like that, right? So these things happen all the time, and so it's important that something like Assange makes that stand, and then you know people have his back on this. So look, if you've always wondered what this situation was, right? Because we've heard so many differing stories. So if you've always wondered what this was, right? What the truth actually was, what's going on, if that, you know, was something that was like, huh, I don't understand what's happening, then I highly recommend checking out Trustful Julian Assange. Right, it's being released in cinemas on the 15th of March. So yeah, we'll put links on the website. People definitely go check because it is so insightful. Right, it's 2 hours. Right, this is nothing to take lightly. It's 2 hours. It's raw. Right, you do see some horrific footage, but it's important. You shouldn't shy away from these things. So I definitely recommend checking it out. It clarified a lot to me, right? Shone some light that I did not know. So I imagine it will do the same for you. So yeah, check it out. Trustful Julian Assange from the 15th of March. It is most definitely worth a watch.